Shirley Muldowney, auto racing's premier woman driver, moving toward her third Winston World Championship. This race may hold the key. Auto Racing 82 on ESPN. Today, the Northstar Nationals from Brainerd International Raceway in Brainerd, Minnesota. The 9th stop on the NHRA Winston World Championship Series of Drag Racing. Brought to you by Budweiser. Remember, for all you do, this Bud's for you. 468 acres carved out of the woods of central Minnesota. That is Brainerd International Raceway, today jammed with thousands of spectators and campers that have spent the entire weekend here. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and this woodsy area has resounded to some record-shattering performances at this inaugural Northstar Nationals here at Brainerd International Raceway. A tremendous day of drag racing excitement coming your way, and working with me today, down on the starting line where everything begins, is sportscaster Marty Reed.
Well, thank you, Dave. This is right. This is where it all begins. The 250-inch dragsters and Top Fuel will take off from this point, with 2,500 horses kicking them in the butt and going all the way down to the other end, 1,320 feet away. Back to you, Dave.
1/4 of a mile. That's the distance in championship drag racing, and at that finish line is a man that sat behind the wheel of one of those 2,500 horsepower Top Fuel dragsters, a former Top Fuel champion in his own right, Carl Olson.
Thank you, Dave. We're in the vicinity of the racetrack known as the shutoff area. And down here, we'll be looking for these cars to slow from speeds in excess of 250 miles an hour. We'll be looking for engine problems, interviewing some drivers, and trying to catch the pulse of the race on this end of the course. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Carl. Shirley Muldowney is currently leading the Top Fuel points chase. Marty Reed had a chance to talk with her.
For the 5th time this year in national event action, this lady, Shirley Muldowney, is going to meet former crew chief Connie Coletta. It seems like every time I turn around, you two are running each other, and he says he's out to get you.
Well, that's all he can say. We all have confidence when we go in. Everybody thinks, you know, you get by the first round, you have it won, but our car's the car to beat, and he knows it.
Right now, you're leading the points chase. It looks as though you're really performing well, a 565 with a 9 here. What about the car?
Car is great. It speaks for itself. It's been in almost every final this year. It's an Al Swindle car built up in Tacoma, Washington, and I hope a lot of racers don't go up and buy a Swindle car because we'd have our hands full. It's an awful good piece.
All right, I shouldn't say if. I know you're going to get past Connie Coletta in your mind. That means you'd probably be ending up with Mark Oswald, and he's number 2. And it looks as though with Lucille Lee not qualifying, this is going to be a 2-person race.
I think it might be Oswald and I in the final, but that's right. We do meet him 2nd round, so that's good. Try to eliminate him right off the bat, and the less points he gets, the better I'll like it.
And that gives you a chance to pad your lead in the Winston World Cup points.
Well, we have a more or less a padded lead right now because the standings, the people are not aware that in the standings it doesn't show that we are actually a race down on everyone. So we can take points at another race where they can't. So we have really a very healthy lead right now.
So, as always, Shirley Muldowney, very confident.
Well, we kind of start out slow, and we don't put the cart before the horse, and we kind of creep up on it. And you don't have to be #1 qualifier to win the race. That doesn't always make it happen for you, just consistency.
Thanks for talking to us. Good luck.
Thank you.
Top Fuel Eliminator at the inaugural Northstar Nationals, kicking off the action with these 2,500 horsepower engines sitting behind the drivers, and the Winston World Champion getting the final touch to his engine by his crew chief is Jeb Allen, pulling ahead. He'll be on the tower side, the lane nearest our cameras here on ESPN's coverage of the Northstar National. Alongside of him will be the fastest dragster in the world today, and that is the Candies and Hughes car from Houma, Louisiana. Young Mark Oswald, the driver. Coasting to the stop comes Jeb Allen after his initial burnout. The burnout is a procedure that you will watch with all the cars. from Top Fuel Dragsters to the slower stock cars. There may be something wrong on the Candies and Hughes car. Now it's pulling forward now. They apparently were just waiting for a second to get the engine started, let Jeb Allen make his burnout. Marty?
You know, this is a tactic that the Candies and Hughes team has been using all week. They do a very low burnout, don't heat up the motor as much as some of the other teams. Seems to be working very well because they're running 256 in qualifying.
Out of Houma, Louisiana comes the team of Candies and Hughes, one of the long-time owner mechanic combinations in this sport. Paul Candies going back into the early 60s along with Leonard Hughes. Leonard himself used to be a driver, not only of a Top Fuel Dragster, but the funny cars. And now he is the crew chief, the wrench, the engine builder, and the man that a lot of people attribute the tremendous success of this car. For Jeb Allen, here's a real story. He has won 10 national event titles. 10 national event titles in his career that dates back to 1972 when he was 18 years old and won the Summer Nationals. Both cars have completed the burnout. They're approaching the starting line into the pre-staging lights. The electronic device in the center of the track is the Christmas tree. That's what starter Buster Couch utilizes to send these two missiles down this racetrack at over 250 miles an hour. They're ready, and side by side, you see Mark Oswald out in front of Jeb Allen, and it is Mark Oswald. His elapsed time, 5:74, 5.74 seconds to cover that quarter mile. And for Mark Oswald, his speed, 256.41 miles an hour, and that is a new national record. The fastest time in the history of the sport has officially been recorded here at the Northstar Nationals as Mark Oswald runs 256.41 miles an hour. And Marty, he said he could do it. They were not real happy with the performance of the car in qualifying yesterday, but boy, they came back today.
They made a few changes, wouldn't be specific, of course, but Paul Candies said they thought they came back with the right combination, and sure enough, 574 right out of the box and 256 miles per hour. As they say in drag racing, that is stout.
Our next pair are started and approaching the burnout area. And when we talk about a burnout, well, you can watch it kind of closely here as Jack Ostrander from Pontiac, Michigan comes up to roll through the water, gets the tires wet, and now he stands on it. That, folks, is what you call burning rubber.
And Ostrander really is the dark horse of the field. He really wasn't expected to qualify, but he came out the first round of qualifying session, ran a 5.77, made it into the show, but he never has matched it since, and he's a little bit worried.
This car is driven by Joe Amato. He comes from Old Forge, Pennsylvania, and Joe is a former pro comp racer. He used to drive an Alcohol Dragster, but decided they're very similar, and we'll be watching them a little bit later on. But the Top Fuel Dragster is the ultimate accelerating machine in the world. There's nothing to compare with it in any form of motorsport. And Joe Amato says, why not put the nitro in and let's go racing? He's already been over 250 miles an hour. He qualified very well at this event, and his lovely wife backing him up into the tracks that he left as he came out of the burnout area.
You know, an interesting point about Joe is he's tied for 8th currently in the point standings with Jim Brainerd. Brainerd failed to qualify for this event, so with this round, he could move into sole possession.
Jack Ostrander has been recording some very good elapsed times lately. He is basically a Midwestern racer, does not travel the national event circuit that much. And Ostrander, a week ago at the popular Hot Rodding Championships, was running 570s, and everybody at that point said his day may come very soon, and it did here. This was one of the toughest fields to qualify at this event, as the number 8 qualifier was Jeb Allen, and he took 5.81 seconds to cover the quarter mile in qualifying, and that was just number 8. The low qualifier is Jerry Beck at a 5.65. Right now, Jack Ostrander with the rear view mirrors, and you say, well, what's he going to be looking for? What he's looking for, he's looking back at the engine to see if there's something going wrong, and possibly he can catch it before it destroys itself and save himself several thousands of dollars. On the far side of the track, Joe Amato, Jack Ostrander, and Amato with a big lead off the starting line. And Amato has got a good one going at the finish, 5.80 his elapsed time. at 245 miles an hour. Jack Ostrander was concerned going into the first round, and justifiably so. 6.27 seconds. His speed, 222. Just did not have the horsepower. So Joe Amato takes the win. You see it there, 5.80 seconds. And that's how long it takes to cover a quarter of a mile from a standing start. The starting line, which is controlled by the Christmas tree, which allows the racers to leave side by side, leave equally together, if they are right on time. And we can get into reaction times and things like that as we go on. But the Christmas tree is actually an electronic device. They have one yellow light and then a green, 0.4 of a second, as we have the starting line crew waiting alongside the next racers as our pair of cars that just ran, Jack Ostrander and Joe Amato, being pulled off the track. The track conditions exceptionally good here, as we have had record-shattering performances in all three categories, with the Top Fuel qualifying headed by that 5.65 second elapsed time by Gary Beck to put him in the #1 spot. Here is Connie Coletta from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Connie Coletta is a longtime drag racer. He won the 1965, or 67 rather, Winter Nationals. Dates back his national event career back to 1965 when he was the Spring Nationals runner-up. Thus far this season, he has won the Grand Nationals up in Montreal, Canada.
Over guess who?
Guess who, right
Shirley
on.
Muldowney.
Guess who's he's running this round? Shirley Muldowney from Mount Clemens, Michigan. A lot of stories going around about this Connie and Shirley situation. Connie was the crew chief for Shirley when she won her first ever Winston World Champion title, which was an awesome feat. The female in auto racing has generally been relegated to not a premier status until Shirley Muldowney came along. And she is the only person to have won a Winston World Championship title twice in Top Fuel Eliminator. She is currently leading the points chase, and as we heard her earlier, is very confident in her ability to go ahead and take a record 3 Winston World Championship title.
Well, so far this year, she's got 4,936 points. She won the Spring Nationals over Lucille Lee. She won the Gator Nationals over Big Daddy Don Garlitz, runner-up at the Winter Nationals, runner-up at the Cajun Nationals, and of course, we told you, runner-up at the Grand Nationals. And she leads Oswald, Mark Oswald, by only 160 points as they come into this event.
So the lady driver, Shirley Muldowney, against her former crew chief, as she has raced many times before. And Marty, you talked with her before we got ready for this first round, and she is very confident. I've never heard her express in so eloquent a terms her feeling of confidence going into this race.
Well, she put it very bluntly, Dave. She said, they've got to catch me. I'm in front. My car is running well. Everybody's got to find Shirley Muldowney and catch me.
Well, the task now remains at hand to Connie Coletta. Coletta owns a flying service, has several small jets, flies both charters and baggage charters, or charter service that flies various and sundry components for some of the motor companies out of the Detroit area. And he got out of racing for a while, quit driving, decided that it was not really what he wanted to do, and devoted his full time to his business, but then came back as the crew chief for Shirley, and then got back in the car and has been very successful since that time. In 1981, he won the Gator Nationals and the Southern Nationals, or I'm sorry, that was Shirley, but in 1980, he was runner-up at the Winter Nationals to Shirley Muldowney. Connie Coletta also was the Grand Nationals runner-up, so he's been there before, and he understands the pressure that can be building on a driver at this point.
They've raced 4 times this year, and they've split them, 1 a pair each.
All right, the rubber match, if you might want to call it that, between Connie Coletta and Shirley Muldowney. Both drivers are putting all their concentration on the Christmas tree. And a red light start. Connie Coletta gives it up on the starting line. A red light left at the starting line by Connie Coletta gives the win automatically to Shirley Muldowney. 5.88 seconds. Shirley goes 236 miles an hour. A 590 at only 203, as Connie Coletta knew he had left the red light on the starting line, and that is an automatic disqualification. What the red light means is you left just a bit too soon.
And just as we speculated, it's now going to be in the semifinals, Muldowney against Mark Oswald. And Oswald's going to have lane choice because he ran a better time.
In instant replay, we can look back and see. Now watch the wheels in the near. There they move, just perceptibly ahead of Shirley Muldowney, and that's all it took. Just literally hundredths, maybe even thousandths of a second too quick. Connie Coletta lost it right at the starting line as Shirley Muldowney advances into the semifinal, picks up some very valuable points, and of course she's now running the car and driver that is right behind her in that Winston points chase. Shirley Muldowney against Mark Oswald in the semifinals. We'll be back with more action in Top Fuel Eliminator here at the inaugural Northstar Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway in just a moment. Back at Brainerd International Raceway for the inaugural Quaker State Northstar Nationals, we have one pair remaining in the first round of Top Fuel Eliminator, and I'll tell you, we're saving the best for last. The #1 qualifier is Gary Beck, and he'll be racing this man out of Bakersfield, California, Doug Kerhulis. Kerhulis moved into the National Event Trail this season, has done an outstanding job in qualifying because this is one of the more difficult fields to make the program. Kerhulis qualified #5 in an outstanding 5.75 seconds elapsed time, but that's an entire tenth of a second slower than Gary Beck. And a tenth of a second from the vantage point at the finish line, you would find, is a tremendous distance in space as far as the separation between the cars as they go across the finish line. Kerhulis on his burnout, first out of the water. And Gary Beck, I don't think having any problems. He's getting ready to move up into the water area as our vantage point high atop this racetrack allows us a view that we can see from starting line to finish line as Gary Beck with the #1 qualifier comes bouncing to a stop. Those big rubber tires, they're 18 inches wide, acting like a rubber ball almost.
And these chassis are so flexible that you'd think they might snap, but they need that flexibility to handle all the stress that the motor of 2,500 horses puts on it. You know, Gary Beck is coming off a win at the Popular Hot Rodding Championships where he matched his 565 performance and ran 249 miles an hour.
Gary has, of course, the low ET ever set in championship drag racing back last season at the Winston World Finals out in Orange County of a 557. And since that time, everybody has been looking for him to equal it, but it's very difficult on those picture-perfect runs to come up with them with any consistency. Doug Kerhulis is hoping that he will have a picture-perfect run because he's going to need it against Gary Beck. He finished #2 in the world last season. Less than 30 points separated him from Jeb Allen, and he came within 2.5 miles an hour, believe it or not, of winning the Winston World Championship title.
And Kerhulis is going to try and dump the #1 qualifier. And you know, Beck has been having all kinds of problems this year. He's qualified well, but many races, until last week, he wasn't getting past first round. In fact, he's 10th in the standings right now in the Winston World Cup Championship points.
Beck won the U.S. Nationals title, one of the most prestigious ever, 2 times in a row, back in 1972 and 1973. And in '74, he won the Winston World Champion title. So he knows what pressure's about, and he knows what the winner's circle looks like. And he wants in there again, and he smokes the tires, going up in smoke. Watch closely. He backpedals and pulls it out at the finish line. It is Gary Beck winning it. A tremendous charge of 5.76 seconds at 241 miles an hour. You saw Beck lose traction at the starting line. He recovered and still drove around Doug Kerhulis, who ran 243 miles an hour, but just did not have the elapsed time. A 586 or a 585 rather for Kerhulis, not sufficient. As we look at it again, you can see just off the starting line, Beck up in smoke. He recovers quickly. The car locks itself back to the ground, and watch him just pull away from Doug Kerhulis. Kerhulis trying his best at 243 miles an hour, and thereby a car length is Gary Beck the winner.
And again, about a tenth of a second, and you can see that it's over a car length at the finish line. And Beck did a tremendous job. You know, these cars only have 2 speeds, fast and faster. And the thing is that a lot of times what will happen is they'll see or feel the car shaking and getting in loose, and they'll just pop it early, go into high gear, and that's exactly what happened.
So that completes the first round of Top Fuel Eliminator. What we can look for in the next round is the matchups between Gary Beck and Joe Amato. But of course, the number 1 and 2 points leaders in the Winston World Championship Series, Shirley Muldowney against Mark Oswald. We have been treated to some superlative performances at this first ever Northstar Nationals, and probably the most breathtaking of them all is the 256-mile-an-hour run by the Candies and Hughes car. Here is Marty.
The current performance king in Top Fuel belongs to this man, car owner Paul Candies of the Candies and Hughes Special. Paul, what are you guys doing? You own the world record, a mark that stood since October of 1975, and now here you've run 256.
Well, we've run 250 at almost every racetrack we've raced at this year. Combination's really working good. New driver, new crew, and of course, old Leonard Hughes is probably the king of making horsepower. Our sponsors have really worked well with this year. The Goodyear people have got us a great set of tires now, and we've seen them getting some of our power to the ground. We had a little problem so far this week. Even at the 256, we kind of smoked the tires a little. I think the car run that fast. Maybe even run faster in a, really first-rate racetracks. We can probably run that fast. We've run 23 or 24 runs this year in excess of 250 miles an hour. So the secret of the thing is just make a run on all 8 cylinders, not burn a lot of stuff up, and good crew.
What about some of the inside secrets, though? I mean, I know you don't want to give away anything, but what are you doing different that some of the other drivers aren't getting as far as mile an hour?
Oh, I think the secret of our car running good is Leonard is so talented as a mechanic. It runs on 8 cylinders all the time, and it doesn't burn itself all up before we get to the end of the racetrack. It's, as we say, they run a lot better on fuel than they do on aluminum.
And Mark Oswald's a hungry driver.
Mark's a hungry young driver, and we're glad to have him aboard.
Well, listen, continued success. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
One of the great gentlemen in the sport of drag racing, Paul Candies out of Des Allemands, Louisiana, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of people here at Brainerd International Raceway that's having a great time. We hope you're enjoying all the action. We'll be coming right back with the Pro Comp semifinals. Don't you go away.
Take it to the limit. Take it.
At Brainerd International Raceway, we're back with our continuing coverage here on ESPN of the Northstar Nationals. I'm Dave McClelland, along with Marty Reed and Carl Olson, and we hope you're enjoying all the excitement of championship drag racing. There is a race within a race here, not only for the Northstar Nationals title, but also continuing to mount points leading to the Winston World Championship crown at the end of the year. Currently, Shirley Muldowney is number 1. Right behind her is Mark Oswald, driving the Candies and Hughes car. In 3rd spot is Lucille Lee. Number 4, the defending champion, Jeb Allen. And in the 5th spot is Gary Beck. In 6th, you see Jody Smart, then Dwight Salisbury, Jim Bernard, and Joe Amato tied for 8th, and Gary Beck bringing up the number 10 spot. You saw number 3 in the point standing at the moment is Lucille Lee, but she did not make this program here at the Northstar Nationals, and that could be very, very costly to her in her World Championship points chase. Marty has the story.
One of the biggest surprises at this year's Northstar Nationals is the fact that the number 3 leader in the point standings, Lucille Lee, did not qualify for the event. What happened?
Well, I just think that we came here with a whole lot of power. We tried something different, I think, on the first run yesterday, and hurt the engine real bad in the second run. Today we definitely had the power, but with the wheels coming up with the last qualifying run, put some more weight on it for this one. And I just think maybe just got overpowered. I don't know. It's a good track.
You're 460 points behind going into this event, not qualifying now with only 3 races to go. You got to play a lot of catch-up.
Well, actually, we had to drop one more race for the Winston points. So this is the race that we have to waive our points on, and we got no points. So
you still feel pretty good about it?
Well, I don't like not qualifying. This is the first NHRA event that I've been to that I haven't qualified at, and race day is always the best day, so I'm pretty disappointed about that. But as far as points go, we would still have to drop a race anyway and waive our points, so I guess this is a race to do it at.
Okay, thanks for talking to us.
Sure.
Good luck at the next event.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. As we get ready to go in the semifinal round of Top Alcohol Dragsters, we're going to take this brief break and come right back to the Northstar Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway. The string of luck for Chris Pettingill has finally run out here at the Northstar Nationals as his car lost fire after the burnout. He turned off early, so it'll be a single for this man, Vic Anderson, from Minneapolis, Minnesota, as Pettingill gets out of his car, very disappointed. But he made it to the semifinals, and that was a bit of a surprise. Anderson shutting it off to a 692, only 181 miles an hour. So it is in the final, a Minneapolis, Minnesota-based entry, Vic Anderson, driving the Rodec-powered Top Alcohol Dragster, running on methanol rather than nitromethane. The cars look a lot like the Top Fuel car, but they are somewhat slower due to the lack of horsepower directly attributable to the nitromethane fuel.
You can look at Pettingill there as the victorious Anderson crew goes down to pick up Vic as he turns in, as he shuts off early, a 692 and 181. But getting back to Pettingill, he got in because John Samulik, the #1 qualifier, was not able to make the program, and he comes in and gets advantage of a red light situation over Ken Murray. But you still got to feel a little sorry for him because it's always tough when you don't get a chance to at least make that trip down the quarter mile.
You can talk to the racers and they will tell you they don't mind getting beat. They don't like it, but they don't mind it near as bad as something breaking right on the starting line and preventing them at least having a shot at a fair, competitive situation between his fellow racer. And for Chris Pettingill, that's just what happened. Here's the final pair of cars in this semifinal round of Top Alcohol Dragster at the Northstar Nationals. In the near lane, it is Dennis Forcell, smoking the tires out of the water. The purpose of that burnout is to get it just as hot and sticky as possible. Another Minneapolis-based car. It may be possible that we could have an all Minneapolis, Minnesota final. But there is one driver standing in the way, and that is 20-year-old Daryl Gwen. And he has been the dominant force in alcohol dragster competition for the last couple of years. This season, he has seen his advantage somewhat disappear as Don Woosley of Woosley, Sharp, and Reynolds has done an outstanding job. But for Daryl Gwen, the 20-year-old professional racer, he was a high school student when he started driving these alcohol cars. His dad, Jerry Gwen, the builder and tuner on them, and also a fine racer in his own right out of Miami, Florida.
Well, Forcell knows he has a lot to make up. I talked to him back in the pits. He says, Gwen's running 0.2 of a second quicker than I am. I've got to get him out the line so we can look for Forcell and beware of the red light situation again.
Starter Buster Couch looking closely at the Forcell and Clark entry from Minneapolis, the bright blue car here approaching the starting line. For Daryl Gwen, the sleek bullet on the spectator side or the lane furthest from our ESPN camera position. He's got the performance advantage, but can Dennis Forcell overcome that on the starting line? I'll tell you, you know it's your day when you not only have the performance advantage, but you do it off the starting line. Look at that. 6:64, the elapsed time for Daryl Gwen at 203 miles an hour. The losing time, 6:83 at 200 miles an hour, and Daryl Gwen moving first off the starting line. So it'll be Vic Anderson against Daryl Gwen in the finals of Top Alcohol Dragster.
Well, Gwen gets off a great start there, and Forcell gave it everything he could. Watch the start, and you'll see that Daryl breaks just a hair faster than Dennis Forcell, but then you can see how Forcell gets a little bit out of shape right there, drifting towards the center line, and that's enough.
That's it, and that is enough for Daryl Gwen to take the victory over the Minneapolis-based car of Dennis Forcell. We'll be back in just a moment with the semifinals of Top Alcohol Funny Cars here at the Northstar Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway. You stick around.
Easy, take it easy.
Back at the Northstar Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway, I'm Dave McClelland along with Marty Reed. And working down in the finish line turnaround area is our compatriot, Carl Olson, and he has got Vic Anderson. Carl?
Thanks, Dave. Yes, Vic Anderson is a local boy making good today. You've got to race the killer in this class, Daryl Gwen, in the final. What are you going to do?
Well, in this kind of racing, it's a lot of skill and a lot of luck, and I've got a heck of a good wrench here in Gary Schmidt, and I think with a little luck, we'll do okay.
Good luck.
Thank you much.
Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Carl. And from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Vic Anderson in the final of this first ever Northstar Nationals at Brainerd. And this overflow crowd is just chock full of folks from Minnesota, and they would love to see Vic Anderson take home the first ever title in Top Alcohol Dragster. Our concentration now, though, is on Top Alcohol Funny Car, and the two best funny cars at the moment are Vern Moats and Frank Manzo. This is Vern Moats. He recorded an elapsed time in the previous round of 6.70 seconds at over 207 miles an hour. That's great, you say it is, until you consider what Ace Manzo, the Winston World Champion, did. He went 6.61 at also over 207. This is one of those races, Marty, you could just call a toss-up.
And Vern Moats needs it desperately because in the points chase, he's down in 9th place. And, of course, Ace Manzo is leading the way with over 5,000 points.
Frank Manzo wants to be the first ever repeat champion in Top Alcohol Funny Car. He needs a win here to increase his lead in that Winston Points Cup standing. A lot of psychological work going on the starting line. And look at Ace Manzo just drill Vern Moats. What a hole shot. Manzo, the last to stage, and he was the first to get there. 6.65 at over 208 miles an hour. A valiant effort by Vern Moats at 6.80 at 207. The crowd rejoicing with Ace Manzo as the Winston World Champion. Notches another victory in his belt. Watch the hole shot put on by Manzo. He was the last to stage. You see Vern Moats is there. Now Manzo will come into the staging beams last and leave first. That's what it's all about right there. You saw him just jump right off to the start, the lead, and within a few hundred feet he had a car length lead over Vern Moats. Our next pair of cars in this Top Alcohol Funny Car competition, the outstanding Gottschalk and Michalko entry. That is the bright yellow machine that you will be seeing. Alongside of him, the multicolored entry of Haywood and Nhra, Bruce Nhra and Don Haywood. Haywood, the driver, the body coming down on his car, checking to make sure the latch is held securely so the body will not come off the car. As you can see, it is a wedge shape almost, and it helps the funny car cut through the air. And you say, well, how can they run as quick and as fast as those little slender dragsters? Well, the aerodynamics on these cars are superior in some regards to those of the funny cars because those big wide slicks in the back are covered by the body. How did the first round go between these two?
Well, Bob Gottschalk came in with a 6.73 at 205 miles an hour, Dave, and he gets lane choice in this situation. Is going to take the right side. Don Haywood turned in a 6.80 flat at 204. So the situation again, though, in the point standings, very important because Bob Gottschalk is number 2 in the point standings behind Frank Manzo. Don Haywood is number 4. So we have had some fantastic racing by top 10 competitors all the way around.
In all the categories of competition, Marty, that has been the case. And I think the crowd that has jammed into Brainerd International Raceway has truly been treated to the best cars in the country here for this first ever Northstar Nationals. For Bob Gottschalk, he needs this win because if he doesn't, that means automatically the Ace Manzo entry will move up a couple of hundred points just by virtue of this win in the semifinal round. It could come down to the final between Gottschalk and Manzo. That's what Bob would like to see. As we had an interview with him earlier, he said that's the final he wants to see, of course, but he's got to get past Don Haywood, and that may not be any easy task.
He's 356 points behind going into this round. He cannot afford to lose.
Both cars very cautiously approaching the staging beams, trying to get set in their own minds exactly how they want to leave. They are sitting in the pre-stage light. Now they gently roll forward into the staging beams. Don Haywood is ready. Bob Gottschalk is ready. A great start. Gottschalk has the bit of a lead at the few hundred feet and a 6.70 for Bob Gottschalk. with a speed of 205 miles an hour, moves them into the finals against the reigning world champion. That is Frank Ace Manzo in Top Alcohol Funny Car. Of course, those two cars will run. Then the winner of that race will run the winner of the Top Alcohol Dragster competition for the overall Pro Comp champion here at the Northstar Nationals. At the starting line, both cars staged very cautiously, and it appeared to us as they left, just what we thought. They left together. No car had the advantage as far as reaction time, but Bob Gottschalk, through the superior horsepower or better traction, pulled a slight lead at a couple of 100 feet out and went on to extend it to take the victory over Don Haywood by approximately 2 car lengths as they cross that finish line. The timing devices, as you can see, are also controlled by light beams across the finish line. The light beams are actually 132 feet apart, with the finish line exactly in the center, and that's that broad yellow stripe, but the light beam is the timing device. It is 1,320 feet away from the starting line, and a photocell controls the action at the finish line as it does at the starting line. And everybody get ready, because we're going into Top Fuel Dragster competition. This is Shirley Muldowney from Mount Clemens, Michigan. She was the first woman ever to be licensed to drive a Top Fuel Dragster. She is the only person ever to win a Winston Top Fuel World Championship title twice. That feat had never been accomplished before until Shirley did it, and she is on her march for her 3rd Top Fuel World title. And Marty, she is feeling very confident.
Oh, excellent attitude as far as her pit and her crew is concerned.
One thing stands in her way here at the Northstar Nationals, though, and that is the blue car of Candies and Hughes, the new national record holder at over 256 miles an hour. And Candies and Hughes, with Mark Oswald doing the driving, have been over 250 miles an hour consistently over the last 25 to 30 runs. For Shirley Muldowney, she also is consistent at speeds of 250 miles an hour plus. But bear in mind, speed means absolutely nothing. It is who gets to the finish line first. It's who gets to the finish line first makes all the difference.
Mark Oswald, we should tell you, we went back in the pits, checked in at the Candies and Hughes camp. They went to a bigger tire. They are trying to get more traction on the track this time. They feel like they've got to run a quicker time, and they ran a 5:74 last time out.
In addition to the bigger tire, what they also went to is a 15-inch wide centerline wheel. It is a new wheel developed by Centerline. It is 15 inches wide, and the tire itself reaching 18, 19 inches in width. They're trying to get more traction in the middle of the course. Good gracious alive, they're running 256. What will they do this time? Let's watch as Mark Oswald at the wheel of the Candies and Hughes car against the Winston points leader, Shirley Muldowney. And a great start by both drivers. Shirley Muldowney is out on Mark Oswald, and she has pulled it off. Shirley Muldowney, burning an engine at the finish line, wins the race 5.71 seconds at 249 miles an hour, and she extends her lead. Shirley Muldowney defeating Mark Oswald in this, the semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator. The losing time for Oswald, 5.79 seconds, 252 miles an hour. As we watch again on ESPN slow motion replay, you can see how it happened at the start as Shirley pulled a slight lead, the wheels just dancing off the pavement. She is out on Mark Oswald, a bit of tire smoke, indicating a loss of traction, and that's all it took for Shirley Muldowney to get there first. Tremendous close racing here at the Northstar Nationals, and that is indicative of the quality field that has shown up for this event.
Well, again, Mark Oswald runs over 250 miles an hour, but this time Shirley Muldowney gets to the line first, and number 1 against number 2, and number 1 prevails.
That's right. He just couldn't make it up at the finish line, try as he might at over 252 miles an hour. Our next pair, the the final two cars in this round of Top Fuel Racing. This is Joe Amato from Old Forge, Pennsylvania. Amato yet to win his first major event, moving up from the Pro Comp ranks where he was very successful. Alongside of him, the low qualifier, Gary Beck, driving for Larry Miner. Larry Miner, a potato farmer owning hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland in 5 western states, has been in all sorts of motorsports as an owner. He also has owned drag boats and all types of things. Gary Beck, his latest driver, the wife of Joe Amato, backing him into his own tracks.
You know, I find that hard. I got to tell you the truth. If I had Jerry backing me up, I'd have a hard time concentrating on the race.
That's all a matter of priorities, I think, Marty, at that moment. And Jerry Amato, as she has for many a year, supporting her husband here in championship drag racing, not only with her thoughts, but also with her deeds. The crew over working on Gary Beck's car, possibly something going wrong, but now they seem to say A-OK at this point. The bright chrome roll cage of Joe Amato sparkling in this Minnesota sunshine here at Brainerd International Raceway. Gary Beck coming into the staging beams. In the far side of the track, Joe Amato here on the tower side. This the final pair of cars. The winner will go in to face Shirley Muldowney in the finals of the Northstar Nationals. Which car will it be, Gary Beck or Joe Amato? A tire-smoking Gary Beck is the winner by the red light from Joe Amato. 578 for Gary Beck, 244 miles an hour. Shirley Muldowney will have the lane choice in the final as Joe Amato wastes the 595, 248. He just couldn't wait. He knew he was down in the performance between his car and Gary Beck's. And Joe Amato tried the whole shot on the Christmas tree, and it did not pay off as Joe Amato lost at the starting line by the red light. As Gary Beck coasts to a stop, he is moving into the finals against Shirley Muldowney to determine the first ever Top Fuel champion at the Northstar Nationals. Gary Beck's car, a engineering masterpiece. Absolutely one of the finest pieces of equipment in competition today. And Carl Olson had a chance to talk with Gary and find out what a Top Fuel dragster is all about.
The Top Fuel Dragster is the fastest and quickest accelerating competition vehicle in the world. And the particular car that we're looking at, driven by Gary Beck, is the quickest car in the history of the sport of drag racing. In October of 1981 at Orange County Raceway in California, this car covered a standing quarter mile in just 5.57 seconds, in excess of 250 miles an hour. And Gary, I wonder if we could just take a quick tour through this car from the front end to the back and have you explain a little bit to us about the engineering features that make this car so competitive.
All right, Carl, let's go up front and take a look. Up front here is a very important part of the car, because certainly it's where all the steering to allow us to keep in a very straight line and for the maneuverability on the racetrack. The wheels themselves look like a bicycle wheel, but they're a special rim and a special tire that will go 250 miles an hour. There's not much weight on the front of a Top Fuel car. They're only about 350 pounds, so each wheel's only carrying half of that. The front wing helps the car at the 250 mile an hour speeds stay down and give the tire a chance to steer. Because of the wing, as we'll see on the back of the car, the more wing we use in the back, the more angle that we have to use on the front wing to plant the car like a wedge.
Gary, the car appears very long from the driver's cockpit forward, and I see a receptacle here for the fuel tank. Is there any other equipment up here in the front of the car other than the body panels?
Not really. The fuel tank takes up the whole front section, and we put it way up in the front for ballast to help keep the car down at the starting line area, the launch of the car. Nitro's very heavy. This particular car has about 11 gallons of fuel in it. We do have a place way out on the nose that we can stick a little bit of lead ballast if some of the starting lines are extremely good and the car's launching hard. Here this weekend, we're using about 12 pounds up there just to help the front end stay down.
Okay, let's take a look at the driver's cockpit real
At the Northstar Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway, a record crowd is in attendance here, including some 8,000 campers that have spent the weekend in the North Woods of central Minnesota. They've had a great time. We hope you have enjoyed all the excitement of this championship drag racing event, the inaugural Northstar Nationals. This is the finals of Top Alcohol Dragster. From Minneapolis, Minnesota, the car nearest our ESPN camera position is Vic Anderson. His car powered by a Rodec engine, which is an aluminum racing engine that is basically a replica of a Chevrolet. Vic from Minneapolis has got to be the hometown favorite, don't you say, Marty?
Oh, he's got the hometown fans behind him, but he's got to come up with about 3 more tenths of power because he ran a 692 last time. Daryl Gwen with a 664. His competition, and that means a big edge to Daryl Gwen.
A big margin for Gwen. At 20 years of age, he is one of the rising superstars in this sport of championship drag racing. He is not, he is currently number 2 in the points chase and could possibly pick up a number of points on Don Woosley, the current points leader. In fact, he was less than 40 points behind going into this event for the Winston World Champion title, and Daryl Gwen at this point has certainly passed Don Woosley for the points lead, which will culminate, of course, in the end of the season with a nice cash award going to the Top Alcohol Dragster champion. Daryl Gwen needs to win right here to move into the finals of Pro Comp Eliminator at the Northstar Nationals. Vic Anderson, near lane, Daryl Gwen in the far lane. The power advantage continuing for Daryl Gwen. 6.66 seconds his time. His speed 207 miles an hour. A valiant effort by the Minneapolis, Minnesota-based car of Vic Anderson, but to no avail at 6.90 seconds, a speed of 191. So Daryl Gwen, with his dad driving the crew truck in hot pursuit, will move into the finals of Pro Comp Eliminator. As we watch again, you see Daryl Gwen just outpowering Vic Anderson from the start. He had a bit of a hole shot. The car in the far lane leaving just a few hundredths of a second before Vic Anderson. But the horsepower advantage of Daryl Gwen coming into play as they near the finish line, and he extends his lead to move into the Pro Comp final.
Well, he's getting such top-end power, too. He ran a 207, a 203, and again a 207 here.
For alcohol cars, outstanding performance at the elevation of 1,300 plus feet here at Brainerd International Raceway. And the nitro burning cars using the nitromethane fuel, which is, as we said earlier, an oxygen-bearing type of fuel, allows them to dial in just more horsepower by putting in more nitro in the tank. But for the alcohol cars, they've got to finesse it. Here we come down to the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car, and a matchup, I'll tell you, this is one written in the books.
This is between number 1 and number 2 in the point standings in Alcohol Funny Car, Ace Manzo. Now, Frank got here with a 665, 208 victory over Vern Most. Now, Bob Gutchalk ran a 670 at 205, beating Don Haywood in the semifinals. Manzo came into the event leading Bob Gutchalk by 356 points. So right now, a big chance for Bob Gottschalk to pick up some of that margin. He cannot go into the lead since they're meeting here in the finals, but he sure could pick up some of that right here against Ace Manzo.
Manzo, of course, the reigning Winston World Champion. He'd love to repeat. Gottschalk gets the word from his crew. Let's start it up. And he will go through the starting procedures, as does Ace Manzo.
It's a very tense time for these drivers, going through their mind exactly what they want to do, whether they want to bring it off the line a little harder this time, or in some cases with the smoking of the tires, ease up a little bit, wait till it locks up, then nail it.
With their 3-speed planetary transmissions, these cars launch very, very hard. They've got a tremendous first gear ratio, and they will come off the starting line almost as quick as their nitro-burning counterparts. The difference is in the middle and the top-end horsepower available to the Nitro Funny Car. But Ace Manzo has mastered this alcohol competition very well as he won the World Championship a year ago. Bob Gottschalk in hot pursuit of him this year. 300 some odd points behind coming in. They come down to the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car. The winner of this will go into the Pro Comp finals against Daryl Gwen.
And we should point out, Frank Manzo, as we said a little earlier, set a new alcohol funny car record last week at the Popular Hot Rodding Championships with a 6:55, and he's been very consistent here. He qualified with a 6:60, then ran a 6:61 in first round and a 6:65 in the semifinals.
As Carl Olson has been pointing out, that the racetrack is just about the same on both sides, and Ace Manzo taking that right-hand lane, giving the left lane to Bob Gottschalk. I don't know that there is any difference. We've watched as the competition has proceeded in the top fuel dragster, the top alcohol funny car, and the top alcohol dragster, and it doesn't really seem to make much difference.
I was talking to Shirley Muldowney's crew, and they aren't worried about lane choice right now going into the finals.
Well, what a matchup that'll be, and we'll be getting to that here in just a moment on ESPN's coverage of this Northstar Nationals. In top fuel eliminator, Gary Beck will go off against Shirley Muldowney. This race is between Frank Manzo in the far lane, Bob Gottschalk here in the near lane. The winner to go against Daryl Gwen for the overall Pro Comp Championship. Both cars building some heat in the engines, and listen to the RPMs come up at the starting line. Creeping forward into that final light beam, which indicates they are properly staged. Gottschalk and Manzo. You couldn't ask for a closer start. What's it like at the finish line? Frank Manzo by a half a car length. 6.60, matching his qualifying time to a losing but tremendous effort by Bob Gottschalk of a 6:67 at 205. So Ace Manzo picks up the valuable points and moves into the Pro Comp Finals here at the Northstar Nationals. In the replay, you can see there is very little difference between the two cars as they leave the starting line. As they pass our camera position just a few hundred feet out, they were neck and neck. Then as they approach the starting line, the top end horsepower of Frank Manzo pays off. Less than a car length separating Bob Gottschalk and Frank Manzo. So it is Manzo at 6.60 seconds. He will have lane choice over Daryl Gwen as we will be moving into the finals of Pro Comp Eliminator along with the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator in just a few moments. Right now, let's go down to one of those Pro Comp finalists, Daryl Gwen, who's with Carl Olson.
Thanks, Dave. And Daryl, you've been racing alcohol dragsters all day long. Suddenly, you're faced with racing an alcohol funny car in the final, and a very quick one at that. Ace Manzo running a 6.60 and actually getting lane choice. What are you going to do to race him?
Well, we're going to play it by ear. The dragsters will run 6.60 all day long. The funny cars usually slack off in the final a little bit. The track conditions get worse towards the end, and the funny cars usually don't stay as consistent as Frank is. He's doing a real good job. The track's really good. We're just going to give it our best shot.
Okay, thank you, and back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Carl. That sets up our final for Pro Comp Eliminator. Ace Manzo against Daryl Gwen, and of course the finals in Top Fuel. Gary Beck against Shirley Muldowney as we come right back to Brainerd International Raceway for the finals at the Northstar National. Way at the Northstar Nationals, we're into the finals of Pro Comp Eliminator. We have watched an 8-car top alcohol dragster field, an 8-car top alcohol funny car field narrow themselves down to one dragster and one funny car. The best in both categories meeting for the overall Pro Comp Championship. The dragster backing up is Daryl Gwen from Miami, Florida. 20 years old, now a professional racer. He started when he was a high school student. Alongside of him is the funny car of Ace Manzo. Frank Manzo won the Winston World Championship title a year ago. He has got a leg up on it after defeating Bob Gottschalk in the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car. He will be going against Daryl Gwen for the overall Pro Comp Championship.
And the thing to remember is Ace Manzo has been running about 5/100ths of a second quicker consistently through this race than Daryl Gwen. And that may not sound like a lot, but it's enough for victory.
Right. It's he who gets to the finish line first. Will it be Daryl Gwen with the dragster? Generally, the dragster is a bit more consistent than the funny cars. Ace Manzo, though, has proved consistency is his forte as he worked his way into the finals with an outstanding 6.60 seconds. All that goes out the window as we're just a few seconds away from knowing who will be the Pro Comp champion. with a whole shot off the starting line, defeating a quicker Frank Manzo, 6.66 seconds at 205 miles an hour. Manzo a little bit quicker, but late out of the gate, 6.63 at 208 miles an hour. And for Daryl Gwen, the reflexes of the 20-year-old pay off here at the finish line by a car length. Your champion in Pro Comp Eliminator, Daryl Gwen. The last race of the day in Top Fuel Eliminator. Shirley Muldown, two-time Winston World. She has already won 2 national events, to the Gator Nationals and the Spring Nationals. She is aiming for a record 3rd world champion title in Top Fuel Eliminator. The first woman ever licensed to drive a Top Fuel dragster, probably considered by many today the premier Top Fuel racer in the sport. Marty, you've been back in the pit area. How is Shirley's car?
Well, she smoked a few pistons in her semifinal victory over Mark Oswald. She ran a 5.71 at 249 miles an hour, but no real hard damage to the car. They're not really concerned about lane choice. They feel their machine can beat any machine out here today. She's confident.
She's also getting herself strapped in, and as you can see, the safety belts being pulled tight as the crewman on her competition's car is turning the motor over backwards to make sure there is no fluid in the cylinders to have a hydraulic condition, as Gary Beck sits patiently waiting as Shirley puts on the bright pink helmet in her Pioneer Special.
Now, Gary was telling me in the pits that he might try and take out a little power in the low end. In other words, off the starting line, he's worried about hazing the tires. In other words, breaking traction. So we'll have to see if his strategy pays off.
Gary Beck driving the quickest car in all of drag racing today. He set that at the Winston World Finals last year at 5.57 seconds. He was the low qualifier at a 5.65, matched a 5.65 did Shirley Muldowney. Gary is a 2-time national champion, a former world champion. He knows what the winner's circle's like. He's looking over at Shirley saying, come on, let's get this show on the road.
The tension is you could cut it. You can feel it when you're down on the starting line. The crews, when they move around the machine, their hands are quivering. They're not the ones driving, but they have worked so many hours, so many days here to get to this moment, and everything is on the line.
Gary casting an eye at our ESPN camera as the crews complete their preparations, and as soon as the race master gives them the word, they'll be starting the 2,500 horsepower plus engines and moving into the water to get set for the Top Fuel Finals. When we talk about horsepower on a Top Fuel dragster or a funny car, it's almost impossible to measure. There's no dyno built today that can withstand the onslaught of power from one of these aluminum racing engines developed specifically for drag racing. Coming to life, Shirley Muldowney's engine. Her crew chief, Ron Tobler, her son, John Muldowney, on the crew, taking the starter away as the Pioneer Special moves up into the water box. Shirley took the measure of the fastest car in the sport in the preceding round as she defeated Mark Oswald in the Candies and Hughes car. She's now matched up against the quickest car at this event and also the quickest car in the sport, that of Larry Minor, the car driven by Gary Beck. We'll see if taking a little horsepower out helps Gary Beck. He hazed the tire very, very severely in the semifinal round, and when those tires are smoking, that means they aren't pulling ahead or the car's not moving ahead as it should. So we'll see if Gary's strategy pays off, and maybe Shirley, as confident as she is, can pull off a victory here in Top Fuel Eliminator. One of the quickest fields of all time at this first ever Northstar Nationals comes down to this in Top Fuel Eliminator. The final 2 cars, Shirley Muldowney against Gary Beck.
What we're seeing here, if you notice how long it's taking to get this race going, it's not because of anything else except strategy. These two are playing a little mental game with each other right now to see who's going to stage first, who's going to get into those lights. Because if they can get one in the lights there, sitting there for a little bit too long, then your hand gets a little sweaty and you just may red light.
Also, these engines are very susceptible to heat buildup. And when too much heat gets in them, they really make too much horsepower, and then when you can smoke the tires just right down to the cords. But right now, Nobody's thinking about smoking the tires except these two drivers. That's Gary Beck in the far lane, Shirley Muldowney, the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator. And the tires up in smoke for Gary Beck. As it is Shirley Muldowney, wire to wire, and how about that, folks? Saving the best for the last. 5:67 at 251 miles an hour. Shirley Muldowney saved it all as she defeats Gary Beck in Top Fuel Eliminator. As we look again, you can see on our ESPN replay how this race was decided. A bit of a hole shot for Shirley Muldowney. She moved just a hair quick. You see the tires of Gary Beck already up in smoke as they crossed the starting line. At that point, Shirley Muldowney, unless something went wrong, had the race won. And I'll tell you, nothing went wrong as Shirley records a 5.67 seconds at 251 miles an hour plus, and a roaring cheer for the Top Fuel champion, Shirley Muldowney. The record book is being rewritten by this woman, Shirley Muldowney, as she powered her car to a big victory here at the Northstar Nationals. Carl Olson, how does she feel?
Well, obviously, Dave, we're here with a very happy Shirley Muldowney and her crew. And Shirley, you know, this was almost a picture-perfect race. I mean, number one race number two in the final, but in this case, number two won the race. How did it feel?
It felt good about 200 feet before the lights. I didn't hear him, I didn't see him, so I thought we had it won.
Well, the World Championship Series is certainly shaping up to look favorable for your effort again this year.
It's a battle for everybody. That Mark Oswald, he is going to be very tough to get by. I hope I do, because if I do, I'll know that I did something this year.
Well, certainly, Dave, the most exciting Top Fuel Championship points chase in years. And that's a wrap from here at the big end of Brainerd International Raceway. And back to you.
Shirley Muldowney, your Top Fuel champion. Our congratulations to her. Our thanks going to the entire staff here at Brainerd International Raceway, and of course the staff from NHRA for making our job so much easier. A particular thank you going to Fran Armstrong and her crew of spotters for keeping us up to date on all the action at the Northstar Nationals. We hope you've enjoyed the racing, because this has been one tremendous drag race. For Marty Reed, for Carl Olson, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Brainerd International Raceway.